Today I'll be speaking with you about the very real problem that is corporal punishment in America. Now, assault is characterized by FindLaw.com as the violence or threats perpetrated on one adult by another. Now, this violence is often met with jail time or hefty fines. However, when that same act of violence is perpetrated against one's own child, is viewed as an acceptable form of punishment. Over 65% of parents in the United States believe in the efficacy of corporal punishment, according to Emily Cuddy from Princeton University. And while many parents would argue that corporal punishment has been an effective staple of American parenting for generations, I would suggest that it's high time this trend ends. Regardless of the child's age or misbehaviors, whether an adult strikes that child with an open hand, a closed fist, or an object, corporal punishment is a remnant of our country's sordid past that deserves to stay in our history books and has no place in our homes. What was once an age of aggression is now an age of progression. And it's time that corporal punishment is finally outlawed across the United States. This is because of the harmful effects that corporal punishment has on the cognitive development of children, the impact it has on the mental health of children, and the efficacy of more compassionate alternatives. So if you'll please, allow me to elucidate you on the impact that violence has on the development of our children. The mind of a growing child is small, fragile, and malleable. And when that tiny brain is subject to the kinds of violence and fear that so many American children see daily, that child's development can and will be impacted. It's no surprise then that a study published by the Journal of Aggression, Maltreatment, and Trauma has identified a correlation between spanking and impaired cognitive development. This study looked at over 1,500 American children ages 4 to 9 and found that a lower IQ, one closer to the national average or below, was linked to corporal punishment, and that an increase in IQ around 20 points above the average for that age group was linked to no corporal punishment and an increase in emotional support from the parents. Now, what the authors of this study believe, and what I conclude from their findings, are that children who are hit in response to their misbehaviors aren't really understanding exactly why they're being punished this way. Corporal punishment is primarily used as a retaliatory measure from an angry adult, rather than a tool for correction or teaching. All this really teaches children is that knee-jerk reactions and violence can be effective problem-solving tools. But parents who utilize nonviolent correction techniques and teach their children to solve problems with communication and collaboration, they facilitate the cognitive stimulation and intellectual development of their children. The development of the child's mind isn't limited to intelligence, and corporal punishment has been linked to an increased risk for mental illness. Fear is a powerful weapon, but when it's used to command subservience on one's own children, that fear can alter how the child perceives reality. A 2012 study published by the Journal of Pediatrics found that corporal punishment increased the risk of the development of many mental illnesses, such as depression, anxiety disorder, and a later addiction to alcohol and drugs. A child is so dependent on its caregiver for everything in life, and must trust that caregiver implicitly. When this close bond is damaged by violence and betrayal, the foundation of that child's perception of the world is shaken. This emotional vulnerability leaves the child exposed to a greater risk of the onset of mental health difficulties. This is a serious problem, as mental health plays a role in so many aspects of the child's future life as an adult, from relationships to incarceration risk to career achievement. If corporal punishment has so many negative effects on the well-being of our children, isn't it worth exploring some alternatives? Some would say that by nature children are rambunctious and rebellious, and that they don't have the mental capacity needed for reason. Now, this stands in direct opposition to the many nonviolent correctional methods that are successfully used today that do not carry the terrible baggage of corporal punishment. I'll highlight what I feel are the two most effective methods. Timeout. Rather than strike a child for his or her transgression, separating that child from the rest of the family and the action allows the child to begin to develop the abilities to calm down independently, as well as reflect on why the punishment was enforced to begin with, without damaging the trust between the child and its caregiver through violence. Praising and rewarding good behaviors. Though many parents advocate for the constant addressment and punishment of bad behaviors to deter misbehavior, praising and rewarding acceptable behaviors may be the more effective route. Corporal punishment may instill the desire to avoid doing bad things, but by praising good behaviors, you can instill and promote a desire to do good things because of the rewarding feeling that is evoked within the child and that the child associates with doing good. Dr. Martin Luther King was fond of saying, "Violence begets violence." And showing our children that compassion and reason are stronger tools than violence is how we'll end this cycle. Most Americans still believe that corporal punishment is the ideal form of behavior correction for children. But I posit that it's ineffective at best and damaging at worst. Around the world, countries like Sweden, Germany, Ireland, and Brazil have allowed corporal punishment to become a criminal offense. It's outlawed. The United States has led the world in change over its near 250-year life, but it's fallen behind in the most important of ways, and that's securing our future by developing our children properly. Children are bastions of hope, innocence, and potential. And I believe that corporal punishment limits who they can become. They deserve and need our care to grow and thrive. And if we continue to impair their intellectual development, harm their emotional wellness, and ignore the more effective corrective techniques available to us, we've failed them and ourselves. It's time we learn from the past and make violence against children a criminal offense, because making this change today might be the only way to secure a brighter tomorrow for our children.